Everyone treats summer like it owes you happiness. Long days, pool parties, your best life on a loop. So what does it mean when you feel worse? The summer blues are real. It's why summer is one of the busiest stretches of the year for people starting therapy. Therapy is not only for when you're in crisis. Growth therapy is for all the moments when you decide you want more. More support, more clarity, more tools. Mental health isn't a destination you reach. It's something you build, and Grow makes that easier. Grow connects you with thousands of high-quality licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. You can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, identity, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. The therapist you want takes your insurance on Grow. Grow accepts over 125 insurance plans. Sessions average $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/booknow today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/booknow. growtherapy.com/booknow. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
This is True Crime Cast. Jamie, as always, here with John. How are you, buddy?
Dude, I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Doing just fine. Living the life. Talking about crime. Getting mad about crime. I think I'm going to get a little mad during today's episode, but it's the price we pay, am I right?
It is. This is a very interesting case, and I'm excited to get going. But before I do, I'm probably even more excited to say thank you to several Patreon members. I feel like this week we just had a ton of people join us. So I do want to thank Austin, Kim, and Olga. Thank you guys so much. Your support means so much to the show. Honestly, keeps the lights on. We could not and would not want to do it without you. But even more than that, you guys I feel like it's a great deal. For $3 a month, you get a exclusive episode only available to Patreon members, and you get our regular content early and ad-free. I will say that's when available, but that is, I would say, 90% of the time.
Well, it's always ad-free.
Yeah.
Just how early it is. Yeah. Most of the time it's 24 hours. Every now and then it'll slip into less than, but
you always will get that exclusive episode on the first. That's kind of set in stone.
And I love the ad-free content. Especially when I'm mowing grass or something, it's hard to stop to skip ads. So
it drives me nuts, if I'm being honest.
I've spent so much money buying things because I can't stop and skip ads. So pretty thrilled about that. We've been trying to make more content over on social media. I made a post over there about prison snitches, about challenging anyone to give me a good example of a prison informant. Nobody could, and we'll continue hammering that home today.
Now, I don't know, but I gave you a suggestion.
What was your suggestion?
We did a whole episode on Blackbird. That was like he was planted there. He was in prison and he snitched. Did he not?
Yeah, but I don't know. He didn't just come forward and say he confessed to me. He came forward with the location of a body. So maybe you're right. That was helpful.
He did get a deal, does most prison snitches.
As the ones do.
There's not
today.
A prison snitch in his, I can't even say it. There's not a prison snitch in today's episode, though.
There is.
Well, but DNA really does a good job of helping us today, too.
I think it does a bad job.
Well,
we'll see if we're talking about the same case. Why don't you get us rolling?
Tina Heins was described as a caring, compassionate woman. In April of 1994, the 20-year-old was newly married to Jeremy Heins, and she was 4 months pregnant with their very first child. Her mother said that Tina was always thinking about other folks, especially her family, while she was growing up in Wisconsin. She said in her last conversation that she had with Tina, this was a conversation they had had about her grandmother, who was elderly and not doing so well. She was living alone, and it seemed like Tina was just curious as to how she was doing. She was also close with her brother, Chad Livernash. That's a unfortunate last name.
It's interesting for sure.
He said, quote, "It was almost like how twins would be. Me and her, we were always really close. We played with the neighborhood kids together. Chad and Tina spent time at the local bowling alley and a Wisconsin Rapids restaurant called Taco John's. Everyone says, though, that Tina's favorite place to hang out was the Rogers Cinema. This was a theater where she also worked. Her brother Chad says, quote, she would go see movies when she wasn't working. Usually she'd bring her friends, but sometimes she'd bring me. Among her friends, Tina was the one who could help you find all the best deals when she would go out shopping. I love that kind of thrifty nature. Her mother said, quote, her friends would say, yeah, we know to shop with Tina because she'll always find the best bargains.
Go Tina. I love that. She also loved her first car. She gave it a name like so many people often do. I wish I had given my cars, any of them, a good nickname. I didn't. She had a 1985 Chevette that she named Snowball. You could often see her cruising the neighborhood in Snowball, honking at her friends, and she spent a lot of time with her friends. She also worked quite a bit. When she wasn't working or hanging out, she was taking care of the kids in her town. She was one of the most heavily utilized babysitters around, and she often talked about how she couldn't wait to have kids of her own. She and her husband, Jeremy Heins, at the time of the incident in question today, were living in Jacksonville, Florida. Jeremy was in the Navy at the time, stationed on a nearby ship at the Mayport Naval Station, and Tina was working as a receptionist at the Sea Turtle Inn in Atlantic Beach. Now, on the night of April 17th, 1994, Tina's boss said that she was done working around 1:30 in the morning, and her brother-in-law, Chad Heins, her husband's Jeremy, he has a brother named Chad. She also has a brother named Chad, so we will be careful to delineate who we're talking about here. But this particular night, Chad Heins was supposed to pick her up since Jeremy was out in the middle of an ocean. However, Chad missed the memo, ended up falling asleep and didn't come pick up Tina, but she got a ride home from a coworker that night. So she did get home kind of in the middle of the night, not necessarily when she should have, because Chad forgot about her, but he was there and sleeping on the couch when she got home.
So Chad Heins was 19 years old, and he had recently moved in with his brother and sister-in-law, supposed to be temporarily. He was waiting for his fiancée in Wisconsin to join him while he looked for a home for the two of them there in Jacksonville. On the evening of April the 17th of 1994, he had been out drinking and playing pool, and he got home around 12:30 a.m. and by all accounts fell asleep on the couch. Tina got home around 2 a.m. and the two chatted briefly before he went back to sleep on the couch. Around 5:45 a.m., Chad Heins was awoken by the fire alarm that was going off, and he found 3 small fires. One was in the kitchen, one was in the living room, and one on the couch where he had been sleeping. This is bizarre to find just 3 random fires. That's not a normal fire situation.
Right. You even waking up to one fire, I think would be wild, but to put it out and to see 2 others that are obviously not related. It's not like they were near each other. They were in different rooms. So obviously this is almost a situation, and I think Chad said this at some point, it had to feel like a dream because it's not a normal thing that should happen on Earth.
It seems like the kind of nightmare that you would like find yourself in where you're just not able to do whatever task is in front of you. There's 3 fires you have to fight, and if they were my dreams, you'd put those out, and then like 5 more would have spawned.
Yeah, it's a riddle almost.
So Chad said that he quickly put out the fires. He was able to get the smoke detector to stop, giving the alarm. But then he saw the front door was slightly open. That's when he noticed the smoke alarm didn't seem to wake up his sister-in-law. So Chad Heins said that he went to Tina's bedroom, discovered that she was there, but she was covered in blood. She had been murdered. She had been stabbed 27 times.
Obviously, such a brutal scene, so much blood there. And again, for Chad Heins, this had to be just wild to wake up to. You put out 3 fires, and then you think somebody may be in the house, and then find this having happened. I think internally he was kind of trusted with the care of the home and of Tina from his brother. So in addition to this all being awful, I'm sure there was an element of guilt here for not protecting her. Police responded to the scene, and for a few days, there was very, very little evidence. There were no pieces of, this was the 90s, so DNA wasn't really ramping up just yet. It was only for really high profile cases. But they did know that Chad Heins had been in the house, and he was the only one in the house with Tina when this happened. So they charged him with first-degree murder and attempted sexual battery of Tina Heins. Police claim that Heins had inconsistent statements and reportedly told his brother, "I messed up. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it." And he very well may have said that. I mean, I think that could be interpreted a few ways, of maybe him sleeping through it and not protecting her, but this was all they had when they placed Chad Heins under arrest. On December 9th of 1996, so 2.5 years after the murder, Chad Heins finally went on trial in Duval County Circuit Court. Other than being in the apartment, there was no evidence connecting him to the crime. There was no murder weapon with his fingerprints on it. There was no biological fluids from him transmitted to her that they were able to identify. Again, DNA it's tough, right? There was also she had lots of defensive wounds. She had obviously been fighting back, and there was scrapings under her fingernails. So she had obviously scratched somebody, but Chad had no marks on his body as if he had been in a scuffle. So there's certainly some doubt there as to what they actually had. They did conduct DNA testing on 3 hairs found in her bedroom, including a pubic hair that was found on her body. The test showed that all 3 of these came from the same person. That person was not Chad, and that person was not Jeremy. The defense also noted that Chad Heins very well could have slept through this because he had a sleeping disorder that made it hard for him to wake up, especially if he had been drinking. They brought up his apologies to his brother, but again, he claimed that it was, "I'm sorry I didn't save her. I'm sorry I didn't protect her. I'm sorry I didn't take care of this home and your wife the way you expected me to," which I totally get that sentiment if he is really innocent.
So the prosecution, on the other hand, argued that it would have been impossible for Chad Heins to have slept through such a brutal murder. This apartment was only 600 square feet. It was a 1-bedroom apartment. So they're saying if he's on the couch and she's in the bedroom, this is so small, he would have heard this. This would have woke him up. And they were seeking the death penalty. They alleged that Chad Heins killed his sister-in-law in a jealous rage. The state said the unknown hairs were likely from the previous owner of Tina and Jeremy's mattress because they had bought it just 4 months before the murder. And I guess they thought since it was a used mattress that's where the hair came from.
And you know what? That's possible. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but it's also not something you can prove unless you can match it to the previous owner.
I mean, most of the time, people, even if you buy a used mattress, will put a sheet over the mattress. So,
one would hope.
I don't know how that's possible.
Also, not out there trying to buy a lot of used mattresses. So,
I got a story we can talk about them. Bless their hearts. So they also called 2 inmates to testify. So here's your prison snitch moment, Jeremy.
My name's Jamie. I have been for a while, actually.
So the prison snitches testified that Chad Heins had confessed to them that he was, in fact, guilty.
More prison snitches, and all they're testifying to is he confessed to me. They had no information that the killer only should have, which is what happened in Blackbird. So I don't love this.
So, I mean, to be fair, this confession is more evidence than anybody else has.
This is
on Chad.
Yeah, this is the best evidence they have.
So I get why they want to use it. So that seemed to be enough to sway a jury, because on December the 20th, 1996, Chad Heins was convicted of first-degree murder and attempted sexual battery. The jury denied the death sentence and opted for life in prison instead.
And we could debate why they did that. In my mind, I think even though they came to the conclusion there was no reasonable doubt the crime happened, there was maybe some unreasonable doubt that didn't want them to put him to death is what I would assume happened here, because it was a brutal murder. So if there was ever a time for the death penalty, somebody doing this to another person, it should be considered. But I think they had a little bit of doubt.
Well, but, they also don't have enough, in my mind, to cast this kind of verdict and really say that this was without any reasonable doubt.
Oh, I agree.
So let's just go back and talk about Chad for a minute. Jamie, did you know that this was not the first time that he had the charge of attempted, rape with sexual crimes?
Yeah, that follows you around, unfortunately.
So when he was 17 and his girlfriend were 17, I don't know the full story, but she became pregnant and he was charged with a sexual crime. Now, I don't know if it was a rape or if it was a statutory rape because they were underage. I don't know. I don't think they lived in Florida at the time either, so we would have to go back and check laws. But, if you're the prosecution, you use that to your advantage, right? This guy is a guy who, here we have a murder victim and she was sexually assaulted. And then this guy who is sleeping in a room just a few feet away from her, who also has a past sexual charge and mysteriously and very conveniently slept through the whole ordeal. I think you can put two and two together and see that the jury may not want to put the guy to death because there's not a lot of other evidence, but you could see how they could twist it to make the jury vote that he did in fact murder this woman.
And look, I can even get why he's a big suspect. Like, it makes total sense. He was in there when it happened. That's undisputed. So for him to be the main suspect, I have zero problem with that.
And if, they didn't have DNA testing like we have today, they were able to get enough from the hair to say this is not Chad's. But if the jury hears, okay, but they did have a used mattress, is it possible that this is someone else's completely? Chad's still the only person in the room or in the house. I could see how they could do it as well. It sucks. So in 2001, there was an appeal, of course. Heins was desperate and he reached out to the Innocence Project. And his first appeal was overruled. They found that there was not enough to definitely overturn anything or grant him another trial. They took the case, though, and enlisted the help of one of the Innocence Projects there in Florida. In 2003, the organization and attorney Robert Beckham filed a motion for DNA testing on the skin cells that were collected from underneath Tina's fingernails. So at this time in the story, technology is advanced enough to hopefully get something DNA-wise out of those cells. And I think you got to look into it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's wild to think that everything progressed that much in less than 10 years, but it certainly had. Things, right around the year 2000, things kind of took off technologically. So I think that's why we see that here. I think we had a conversation last week, though, about when further testing should be done and shouldn't it be done as far as a convicted person asking for it. I think this is a great example of a time when they made the right decision here to test this, because while they could try to explain away the hairs or at least talk about possibilities of the hairs being somebody else's, it seemed pretty clear that this skin under her fingernails belonged to the guy who killed her.
I don't know if it's just a money problem or what, but if I am in charge of making those decisions, if you, as the person that I have put in jail for the rest of your life, comes to me and says, please test those, I'm going to be like, all right. It's in my mind, I'm like, we're going to double down on you, because if I do this testing and it's you, then I think we ought to go back to to court and say, you know what, why don't we do that death penalty
So you
after all?
think if we put some skin in the game for these individuals that might make it more likely, like we'll pay for this, but if you're lying and we can prove it, then you've got to do this or that.
Now, I'm not a criminal, and I know criminals don't always have the most logic, but
That's also something a criminal would say, but go on.
doesn't it make sense that if you know that you are guilty, that you're not going to be pushing for this kind of test?
You would think that confirmation would go against your pleas to get out of prison. Like if they say, yes, this is definitely you, then you have no chance on any kind of technicality that you may otherwise have.
So I don't know. If I'm the person making that decision, I'm going to be intrigued when that request comes at the behalf of the one who is already convicted and sentenced.
Well, when we get back from the break, we'll talk about how the results went out and really shook up what we thought we knew about this case.
The season hasn't even started, but everyone's already picking a champion. Trade those predictions on Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform. Right now, the Rams are the favorites and trading at 16% to win it all, meaning a $100 trade pays out $590 if they lift the trophy. Download the Kalshi app and use code HOOPS to get $20 when you trade $20. KALSHI. Kalshi. Trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Kalshi products are not available in all jurisdictions. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see kalshi.com/regulatory.
So they were able to get the testing for the fingernail scrapings under Tina's fingernails. I don't know. I was unable to find clearly who paid for that, if it was the state, if the Innocence Project was able to raise the money or so forth. But ultimately, that part doesn't matter as much, as does the fact that it did not match Chad Heins or Jeremy Heins. So I think if you try to explain away the hairs, you can definitely do that. You can try to do that at least. But the inability to explain away the fingernail scrapings, I think, changes the complete perception of Chad's guilt. So the attorneys asked for those to be tested against the DNA that was found elsewhere in the room, like on the hairs. In 2005, they showed that the skin cells under her fingernails matched the hairs from the unknown person on the male profile. So that means that the same person she scratched was the person who had the hair they found on her body, which doubles down on the fact that Chad may not have been in her bedroom last night. At least it brings up reasonable doubt, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, to take it another step further, there was also semen that was found on the bed sheets. Those were tested, and they were the third match. So all three of those things combined equaled one person that was definitely not Chad.
Definitely not Chad, and almost certainly the perpetrator of this crime. During the appeals process, attorneys also learned that there had been a fingerprint discovered on the faucet of a blood-stained sink before Chad Heins went to trial. Police and prosecutors knew about this fingerprint, and they knew it didn't belong to Jeremy, Chad, or Tina Heins, but they never put it in front of the jury, and they never gave it to the defense. At least that's what Chad would claim. They claim they did. It's kind of murky whether there was chain of custody of that part of discovery, but he says he didn't have access to that fingerprint.
And help me remember, what is it called when that kind of information isn't given to the other parties?
That would be a Brady violation.
We've covered that extensively here, and that is a clear Brady violation if they didn't present it to the defense.
Yep, it's got to be, they have to share everything they have that could potentially be exculpatory in nature or help prove the innocence or help raise doubt for the guilt.
I do just want to say again, like 27 times this poor woman was stabbed. She has skin cells under her fingernails where she fought back. There is obviously a huge amount of blood, and they know that somebody used the sink to wash themselves off. And Chad over here has no marks on him whatsoever. They said the only thing that he had was a blister on his thumb that they suspected was where he could have held a butane lighter down too long. So basically, they thought that maybe he had started the fires. Maybe he got the blisters putting out 3 fires,
Right.
So it's insane to me that they would even charge this guy, let alone convict him.
Yeah, it's wild to me. I think they wanted to close this, and they had one suspect, and they just ran with it. In 2006, in July, the Innocence Project filed a motion to vacate Chad Heins' convictions based on the new test results and learning of the fingerprint. So they had these new results that say there's a ton of male DNA, but none of it belongs to Chad. Also, there was this fingerprint nobody told us about. Ultimately, they did vacate the conviction. And I got to say, John, there's a really high bar for vacating convictions, but I think they met it here. I think this DNA combined with the Brady violation makes this a pretty easy yes, I would say, to overturning it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jamie, let's just kind of run with this thought for just a second because it's in my brain. But like, if you don't charge this guy, right, because you just feel like maybe you don't have enough, the public's going to be out. Like, the public's going to be out to get you. That you're telling me that the only guy that we know for sure was in the house with her this night, you're not going to charge with her rape and murder?
Yep.
So they're in a tough spot because in my mind, if I'm the investigator, it's going to take a lot to convince me that Chad didn't do this.
Yeah.
But you look at Chad and you look at what, Tina had put up a fight with, I'm going to be like, how did you not get cut up? Maybe you had long sleeves on. Maybe you had covered yourself completely. But then if that's the case, you still are going to get cut because she has fingernail. Your DNA under her fingernails. So,
she has somebody's skin for sure.
I mean,
literal skin in the game.
I can't understand, but I guess I do at the same time.
Yeah. I get the tunnel vision of having one guy, but I'm actually shocked they went to trial with this little evidence, because if he's not convicted, they can't try him again for it. And even though they vacated his conviction, the state had planned to prosecute him again. So they kept him in prison awaiting a new trial. And it was at this time that the DNA from the semen finally came back. And if you want to try to explain away the hairs, whatever, I think the DNA under the fingernails is enough. But especially when you show that she had been assaulted, there was semen on the sheet, and it did not belong to Chad, I think that's a done deal. So those results showed that that semen came from the same person with the skin cells and the hair, and that profile was then entered into CODIS, the convicted offender database, but didn't have any matches. So, John, this seems crazy clear that this wasn't Chad. Please tell me they let him out.
Yeah. On December the 4th, 2007, prosecutors officially dropped the charges against Heins. So at first, they were going to just hold him until they could be, a chance to do another trial, and there was $1 million bond. So, but then they decided, you know what, we don't even have enough to even have charged this guy. So they dropped the charges. Heins was 33 years old when he was released from prison, and he had went in when he was only 19. And so that means for 13 years, this guy had been in jail for a crime that he did not commit.
And that's the 13 years when you're usually building your life, right? Like you're in your 20s is when you're establishing your career. You're starting to think about building a family. So this was, more or less his prime that he spent in prison.
As far as we know, Heins did not receive any compensation for, being in jail, in prison for 13 years. So.
Yeah, and there may have been something, because sometimes if they settle out of court, it's possible that it may not be on the books or what have you. But I think he probably didn't, which is pretty gross considering the fact that they used prison snitches.
So let's fast forward just a few years, like maybe around 10 or so. In 2018, Jamie, there was some breaking news in the world of true crime. That was the Golden State Killer was identified, and investigators decided that they were going to try this new genetic genealogy to try to solve this case. So the investigating team contacted the Texas lab in 2021 that specialized in identifying profiles from a very small sample of DNA. So they sent this off, they got approval, and a profile was developed, genealogy searches were done, and a likely match was identified. Michael Ziegler. Ziegler served in the Navy with Tina's husband, Jeremy, and was a very, very close friend to them both. There's a picture, Jamie, that you can look at online of Tina and Jeremy at their wedding. And guess who is standing next to both of them?
Yeah, they had a courthouse wedding, and he was their witness that they brought to sign the paperwork. So essentially, he was the best man and the man of honor.
Yeah, he served as a witness. This was just 5 months before Tina was murdered. On August 28th, 2025, a grand jury indicted Ziegler for first-degree murder. So he was arrested on September the 4th, 2025 in Covington, Georgia. In October of 2025, 52-year-old Ziegler pled not guilty to the murder and was ordered to be held without bail.
John, I can't fathom what this family is going through. I was unable to find, and I was super curious about this, where was Jeremy's family on Chad's guilt? Did they think, yeah, my brother killed my wife, or was he defending him? I really couldn't get a good gauge on that. And that would be fascinating for me to know, was he defending his brother, or did he think his brother did it? Either way, the trauma of bringing this all back up, which, I mean, absolutely it needed to happen. You have to get the right guy. To find out it was your former best friend, not only did he rape and kill your wife, he then sent your brother to prison for 15 years for it. This guy's just the worst, right?
Yeah. I mean, but people can fool you, right? I mean, obviously Jeremy probably thought a lot of this guy to have served with him for a long time, and then, to your brother in arms, that means a lot. But yeah, to have murdered your wife, to let your brother be in jail for 13 years. Yeah, I'm surprised we're not also talking about the murder of this guy when Chad and Jeremy found out about it.
Yeah, I assume he was immediately taken into custody, maybe even before they found out, or else that could have or would have, or I don't want to say should have, but I kind of want to say should have happened. It's just, if you were punched in the gut when your brother got convicted, how about we let him out and convict your best friend? See if that feels any better. That's such a wild twist to me. And Ziegler wasn't really a suspect early on. He knew the family, but nobody knew if he was around the house, if he had been near where Tina was. He was not the person that gave Tina a ride home that night. I think that could have been a suspect, but that wasn't Michael either. It's just a terrible, terrible scenario that if it was not for the Golden State Killer being solved with genetic genealogy, and again, if you're not familiar with that, it's basically people who enter their DNA into a database for the purposes of legal searches, not just for 23andMe or Ancestry.com or whatever. They find a connection and it's like, well, it's not you, but I can tell it's your cousin. And then they proceed to follow those leads, and that's how they ended up at Michael.
We released a bonus episode a few months ago where we talked about how if you have done those genetic searches, like the genetic profiles for yourself, those aren't automatically uploaded to CODIS or whatever. But if you've done those before, you can get your results to be pulled out and put into a database where if you have someone in your family that might have done something they shouldn't have, they can kind of build a profile based on what data you've entered.
And that was an interview with Karen Bender from Ramapo Genetic Genealogy. They're doing some great stuff up there. I think this one was Othram in the Tina Heins case. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, it was Othram.
That's the big dog. That's the main player in genetic genealogy. But when you solve the Golden State case, your name gets out there, right? Kind of a big deal. And that's what they're turning to this tactic in so many other cases, and that led them to Michael Ziegler to solve the murder officially for Tina Heins. Her hometown community back in Wisconsin still remembers her. They actually started a Tina Livernash, that was her maiden name, Tina Livernash Memorial Scholarship in her honor to provide tuition assistance for local Catholic school students. There's also a 5K in Wisconsin Rapids each year titled Tracks for Tina. That's a fundraiser for that scholarship. The family says the memorials help, but they'll never fully shake what happened to Tina and the decades of turmoil that it caused for them to finally get to her killer.
Jamie, I'd listened to an interview that Chad had done when he was released from prison, and they talked to him. I mean, like you said earlier, it was that phase of life that he missed where you're building your own life. That's the age where you either find a trade or you go to college, build your life, build your marriage, family, all that stuff. He missed all that. He said the only thing that didn't change the whole time he was in prison was that Brett Favre was still the quarterback for the Packers.
That is funny that he brought that up. And it was a very revealing interview of kind of his mindset throughout this whole thing. But that never crossed my mind until he said it. It's pretty wild.
Well, shortly after that, things changed.
And I got to thinking a lot about that when I was researching this case. From 1994 to 2007, the world like if it was 1950 to 1960, we got a new president, maybe so-and-so down the street sold their farm.
The style of cars changed ever so slightly.
But technology is basically the same. We lied about going to the moon. They shot a president. Like, some stuff happened, right? But it's not from 94 to 2007 is a wild time to miss in history.
I mean, we grew up in that time. We knew that one year we didn't know what the internet was or that it would even be a thing. And then a few years later, we're downloading our favorite songs on the internet.
And you can't live without it.
I think the Toyota Prius comes along in that time frame. I mean, we're making cars that run off a battery instead of combustible fuel. I can't speak, but yeah, lots of change in a short amount of time. Combustible. I know how to say words. He
missed all of that. And of course, Jeremy lost his wife and lost his brother for a large portion of his adult life. So such a tragic story all the way around. We try to be fair to law enforcement when we can, but they really screwed this one up. Tunnel vision in the worst possible way. And then using technology to finally solve it and to bring the right person to justice. They say justice delayed is justice denied. And I feel that way about this case. There was so much injustice around this case until they finally solved it. He went in front of a grand jury last fall. He still hasn't been sentenced for this, but that'll be coming and he'll be gone for good, I think.
I think there ought to be some way to charge him with not stepping up and letting somebody else take the fall, especially when that guy is the brother of your best friend.
That's good.
Go ahead and seek the death penalty. Not only did you do the original horrific crime, but you let somebody else go down and ruin their life too.
I mean, I think he could make a case that that's false imprisonment. He knew he went to jail for something he didn't do and he allowed it to happen.
Yeah.
I think you could make that case. Or we can start making up a charge for it, because I absolutely think it's one of the, like, you didn't just take two lives because Tina was pregnant, but
you basically took three.
You took a third life with framing or getting Chad convicted. So
I'm not looking for us to become the Wild West again, but I feel like there ought to be some liberty for judges to say, you know what, out of all the dirt bags I've seen, you are the biggest dirt bag. So I sentence you however I feel like. And that is forever, ever, forever, ever. Forever, ever.
Yeah, a little outcast there for you. I agree with you. And it's, again, such a heartbreaking case. This is one that usually when we have a misidentified killer that is falsely imprisoned because of a prison snitch, we end up with nobody in jail and we're back to square one of, do you think we'll ever solve this? That's usually our conversation. Very grateful today that the conversation is, yeah, they found him and finally got the right guy.
Absolutely. Guys, we appreciate you sticking around with us each and every week. this week we have a couple of True Crime to Go episodes. Remember, those episodes are now 20 minutes long-ish, but they are always going to have 2 cases. So if you get through with one story, just stick around. There's going to be another.
Every story will be 10 minutes or less there. So it's about my commute to work. So I think it's a lot of people's, and that's kind of why we developed that format. And those will continue to come your way, as well as these cases. And we look forward to some more interviews and collaborations that are just around the bend as well.
Don't forget, if you are rather new to this podcast, we also have a channel called Bless Their Hearts. It is a comedy podcast that is put on by yours truly. And of course, Jamie is there too each and every week. We also have some guests on there every now and then. So go check that out. It's everything but crime. It's called Bless Their Hearts.
It's a really good palate cleanser after talking about murder all day. So
those release every Thursday.
So join us over there, and we'll be back next week with more true crime.
Until next crime, this has been True Crimecast.
You've listened to True Crimecast, distributed by Stoveleg Media. Check out stoveleg.com to find out more about your hosts and to find other podcasts to listen to. Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.